finishing a month on creativity. I love this topic. I love this book. As I shared in the beginning of the month, the first time I read it, I hated it, and now I love it. Big Love, Big Magic. Big Love was a TV show. That's not what I'm talking about. Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And so, you know, the whole concept of spending a month talking about creativity and how it relates to our life is the fun part of the spiritual philosophy for me. Because when you cut through all the dogma and you cut through all the different religions and you get through the whole thing, the whole idea of having religion or spirituality in our life is to understand ourselves and where we belong in the cosmos. When you get down to it, it's trying to figure out who we are, and it's trying to figure out where we belong. It's always about belonging. And so when we start to talk about creativity, what happens is that it connects us to the larger life. And when we cut through all the different belief systems of how things come into being, when we come down to the foundation of it, God creates. The divine created the heavens and the earth, and it created every single one of us in its image and likeness, which means that we are all creators. We're many creators of the magnificent Creator. And so when we are not consciously embracing creativity as a part of our experience as humans in this life, we're missing a whole side of being. We're missing a whole side of support, of possibility, of opportunity, of ideas. And so for me, sometimes, I don't know about you, but I was brought up to think of art as the extra thing, as being artistic or creative, as the thing you do when you have some extra time. Or it's the first thing to get cut from schools, right? The arts and music programs are usually the first ones to go because they see them as extraneous or extracurricular, right? But the truth is that it's the core aspect of who we are, and it's really important. And again, it's not just about being artistic. It's different. It's about being open to possibility. It's about seeing things in a new way. And so when we engage with creativity, what happens is that we have an experience of fulfillment. We have an experience of satisfaction. We have an experience of awe and wonder when we are engaged in living that way. And so today, the culmination of this month is talking about enchanted living. Because that's my best wish for us, is that and again, I'm going to say that it's not that your life from the outside is going to look any different. Anybody who's seeing you is not going to see anything different, maybe. Maybe you'll still drive to work the same way you drove to work, and maybe you'll still say the kinds of things that you do, and still do the same kinds of things that you've done always. But the quality of your experience with your life will be transformed when you embrace creativity. Because everything becomes magical. You allow the divine support to pour itself into your experience and to be part of the truth of who you are. That's the difference between living a life and enchanted living. And my best wish for each and every one of us is that we have the understanding of what that means so that we have the opportunity to actually choose it. As you'll find out a little bit later, it's really up to you whether you're going to do that or not. You could get busy creating, or you could just get old. Right? And so that's the idea here. Because what happens is that we get entrenched in life, and we fall into a place of disenchantment with life. We get disappointed, we hold on to resentments, we start to get envious of other people's experiences. We wish that it were different, but we're not really willing to make any changes to move in that direction. And so we become disenchanted with ourselves and with our lives. And that's a place that it's a slippery slope that can lead us to an experience of despair and grief over what could possibly be. But again, it's never too late. It's never too late to fall in love with your life. It's never too late to fall in love with God as you. It's never too late to embrace the possibilities that are there, calling you and wanting you from the inside out to shine. And so the idea of being present with this creative process opens us to living in it in a new way. There's this idea we call, and we teach it in class a lot, about the kingdoms of consciousness. There's 4 of them. And so the first kingdom is victimization. It's where everything's done to me. It's the whiner state, I call it, where, oh, now it's raining and my picnic is ruined, and now he left me, and I lost my job. I mean, it's the bad country song, where you lose your job, the girl takes your truck and steals your dog. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, that's first kingdom. But most of us are stuck in second kingdom, which is where everything's done by me. I can do it. We are true blue Americans, and I'm a Puritan. I'm from New England, so I'm from the puritanical unfoldment there, which means you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you get it done. Your survival is up to you. And it's only what you're capable of. So you can only go as far as your brain can take you, as your body can take you, as strong as you are, as connected as you are. You got to do it yourself, and that's kind of the culture, right? That we honor the self-made people, and we celebrate that, But it's hard. It's so hard to try and lift our own life, never mind trying to expand into something new. What I'm trying to get us to is to third kingdom consciousness, which is where it's done through me. Where we open to the divine spirit that is sourcing and supporting us, it's loving us, it's creating us, and wants to be expressed as us, which is where we're headed. That's fourth kingdom, is as me. But what I'm talking about today is moving from second kingdom, by me, into through me, which is opening to the fact that there's something greater than you are, and it's there for you, and you have an opportunity to connect with it and allow it to support you. It's not just you, again, out on the ocean in a rowboat without a rudder. That's not you. You are the divine ocean itself that is rising to support you as the boat to get where you want to go. That's God in action as your life. So we're trying to move from by me to through me. You with me on that? Good. Okay, I usually only do that in class. But I like the idea of thinking about what it is that we're really doing here. We are trying to figure out a way to connect with the divine and have a different kind of relationship with it. Not that we pray to the God on the cloud and pray that it's going to be in a good mood, because sometimes that God gets pretty pissed, right? According to the scriptures. That God gets pretty mad sometimes and kind of throws lightning bolts, and we're hoping that that's not going to happen. That's not the divine that I'm talking about. That's not our goal, is to try and please that creator. What we're trying to do is be a divine channel for the creator. God needs us. It needs us so badly that it created us. And it needs you to be you so badly because it wants to express itself in that unique way that you are in this life. And so as we allow the divine to go through us, do you really think that God, who loves you so much that from the eternity has thought the thought that is you and brought you into form, it's going to bring you into form and then stick you on the street corner and hit with a quarter and say, good luck. I hope it works out for you. That's not how it works. We are trying to allow the divine to support us because that's what it wants to do. I think that if God were able to get frustrated with us, it would be frustrated because we don't listen to it enough from inside our knowing. It would get frustrated with us because we're, resisting its guidance. Because if we allow it and we open to it, then everything unfolds in grace. Opportunities open to us, possibilities show up that we could never even imagine. But we have to trust it, and we have to commune with it in a new way. Instead of trying to please it and by me, we're going to be partnering with it and have it move through us. Through me. So this idea resonates so well with the teachings of the science of mind. So I have a long quote, sorry, but this is important. This is from the beginning of the Science of Mind from Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, and he says this: there's nothing supernatural about the study of life. Let us then approach the science of mind, the science of spiritual psychology, with awe, but not with fear. For truly a humble thought, but not with a sense that we are unworthy. Let us approach it normally, happily, willing to accept, glad to experiment, hoping and believing that as the result of our efforts, we shall each derive a great good, a sound understanding of the natural laws of life as they apply to the individual and his relationship to the whole universal scheme of things, where we belong in the cosmos. He's talking about the fact that this is not crazy stuff. This is just how it is. But we need to be willing to approach it from that place of this is just naturally how it goes. That we are part of something greater that we can't see, that we can't touch, that we can't talk to, but is more real than anything else we know. He goes on to say that this is the simple meaning of true metaphysical teaching, the study of life and the nature of the law, governed and directed by thought, always conscious that we live in a spiritual universe, that God is in, through, around, and for us. There is nothing supernatural about the study of life from the metaphysical viewpoint. That which today seems to us to be supernatural, after it is thoroughly understood, will be found spontaneously natural. We just don't understand how it's working yet. We don't understand how it works and how it operates. But as that unfolds, as we do, we'll start to realize that this isn't as crazy as we thought. That the idea that we are inspired by this infinite mind and that we are one with all that is, that's just an unfolding realization. Now, for those who are scientific minded, take heart because we are revealing how this is working more and more. But for those of us who are of faith and who know it's just how it works, because once this happens to you, once you open to living a life with God and as God, things start happening, magic starts revealing itself all around you. You don't need to know how. You just need to say thank you and say yes, please, more, please. The enchanted life is the one where you don't question, whoa, is that a fluke? Whoa, is that a coincidence? Who cares? Just welcome it, celebrate it, enjoy it, because it's there for you. It's your enchantment. So we can go back to the pretty picture. Thank you, Ernest. Aha. So what this reminds me is that the whole point in everything we do is not about manifesting goodies. You know, the most superficial teaching of the science of mind is that we do this to manifest stuff, that we get stuff, that we can maybe manifest a little peace of mind, that I can open to, you know, we used to call it the princes' palaces and parking spaces. That's what most people who came to our church wanted to manifest: a job, a house, you know, a mate, and a parking space in the front of the church at 11 o'clock. You know what I mean? Like that's what most people wanted. And anybody in my foundations class knows that that's what we talk about, that we talk about thought into form, and that we start by looking at how we're manifesting in our life. But the true focus of this teaching is so much deeper. It's about allowing you to create a deep and sturdy, solid relationship with the divine, so that you know so well that you're not alone. From that inner place, that there's not one moment when you feel that you've been forsaken. That there's not one moment when you feel like you're not really enough. You are a child of God. And this whole idea of everything that we do and what we study is to align us with that infinite divine source and creator that wants to create through you. And it wants to create so badly that it's going to push you in every possible way until you say yes. And until you wake up. Has anybody experienced that pushing? Hello, I have. You don't need to really raise your hand. But that's what happens, is that God and life want you so badly to be open to it, that it's going to poke at you and it's going to push you, and sometimes it may feel like it's going to kick you in the butt. And that's what happens until you say, enough, okay, I get it. There's something else operating here. It's all about knowing the truth of who we are. And to know this truth, as Jesus taught, that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It's because it's allowing us to know that we are not a small human entity that is alone. So in order to do this, we need to open to this divine creative process, and remembering that God is the creator. God was the one who created all things, and all of us open to be creating. And again, it's so funny that John chose that song, because I wrote here, you're either creating, you got to either get busy creating, or you got to get busy dying. Because one of the two things are happening. you can tell the people who are getting ready to make their transition, and I've been with people years and years and years through this, one in particular in my family, who for about 2 years before he got sick was only talking about the past, the good old days. He was talking about, and he wasn't an elderly man at the time, but he was talking about what was. You could tell that he had, I don't want to say he had peaked, because I don't think anybody ever really peaks, but maybe we peak 500,000 years from now, we're each going to peak, but we're not peaking now, you know? So the idea that he kind of had peaked, and he was talking about everything from the past, and I wasn't surprised when he got sick, because there wasn't anything new. So we'd be in these conversations, and I'd be talking about what's happening, and he'd be talking about how it was in 1972. And I'd be talking about what's possible, and he'd be talking about 1987 when he went to wherever, you know what I mean? And I was so afraid for a while, and the truth is I wasn't surprised when he got sick. Tried really hard to keep him in the present moment, and he was just complete. Now, souls complete when they complete. I'm not judging it. Would we have liked to have this family member here longer? Absolutely. But I knew that he felt complete, and then the body follows our minds. And so that's the cautionary tale for all of us, right? That we need to be creative, be open to life, be immersed with life in such a deep way, or else something else is going to be creating your next adventure. And so we are called to be part of that divine creative flow. And that's what Science of Mind is all about. There's never a lack of creativity or creation, because we're part of that one mind, part of that one body, that one life. And so what I love about this book, Big Magic, is that it shows us and teaches us how to engage in living a creative life. First, we addressed our fears and being with our fears of creating and our resistance to it, and then talking about how it operates. And she tells this story that I'm going to shrink down, hopefully shrunk down as much as I can, but I encourage you to get the detail of it if you're inclined to do so, because it's an amazing story. She has this amazing story, and that's why I'm trying to tell a long story shortly here. But so this is what happened. Elizabeth Gilbert, if you don't know, was the one who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and it was a huge success. And after she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, she was trying to figure out what her next project was. And her beloved, Philippe, was telling her a story about what happened in the early 60s in his home country in the Amazon. They decided, someone in the powers that be at the time had decided in the 60s to build a highway across the rainforest. And all this ensued about it. What came down to it was that they raised all of this money, which went to all sorts of different pathways of corruption. But they finally got enough money together to build the road, and they got contractors, and they figured out who it was going to be, and they started to build this highway. And all went great until the rainy season started. And the rainy season, they had not paid attention to what the rainy season in the Amazon was like. And so what happened was they got to a place where they could no longer continue the construction, and they had to abandon it and leave everything there and say, okay, we'll come back when the rain stopped, right? Well, once the rain stopped, a number of months later, they came back, and what they found was that the jungle had swallowed everything. So everything that they had paved was gone, and even the hardware, the trucks and the machinery and everything was literally swallowed. And the way that it's told is that these are machines that have tires that are bigger than a human, right? So these are huge things, and they could just not find them. And so when he told Elizabeth this story, what she experienced was this feeling of, she got a little sick to her stomach, and the hair on the back of her head stood up, and she got goosebumps, and she felt a little ill, and it was, she says in the book that it's either like falling in love, right, the feeling of falling in love, or hearing some shocking news, or being in a moment of uncertainty, and she knew right then that was the idea that she needed to follow. So she started to write this book. She got this idea to write this book, and she started working on it. She did all this research. She got pretty far with it. She outlined the whole plot, and then something happened personally with her relationship. I guess they weren't married yet. So her boyfriend couldn't get back into the country. He was from South America, and they were living abroad, and they couldn't come back to the United States. So they had to work out this immigration thing, and they needed to get married. And if anybody read Eat, Pray, Love, she's got an issue with being married. So it was a big deal. And while she was working that out, she put the idea aside. And it was 2 years. It was 2 years that she had taken this idea and set it aside. And then when she took it back up and everything got resolved and they were back in the States and they were married and everything was great, she went back to work on her book. But the idea had left her. The inspiration had left her. She had the outline, she tried really hard for months and months and months, but she couldn't get anything anywhere else with it. So she let it go. Now, that's a good story about how ideas come to you and how we're supposed to care for them and create a space for them. But that's not where her story ends. What happened was about a few months later, she was at a writer's conference in New York, and she met the author Ann Patchett. And they hit it off. And they had this epistolatory relationship where they were writing letters back and forth to one another. And in one of those in one of those letters, she shared with her about her experience with her Amazon jungle story. I think one good cough will get it. I really want to tell the story, so this coughing thing doesn't happen today. So she called it her Amazon jungle story. And Ann Patchett said in her next letter, said, that's interesting, I have an Amazon jungle story. So they waited until they were back in the same place again, having lunch somewhere else in Seattle, I think a couple months later. And she said, okay, Ann Patchett said, well, you had your idea first, so you tell me what your story's about. So she said this. My story is about a spinster from Minnesota who's been quietly in love with her boss for many years. He gets involved in a harebrained business scheme down in the Amazon. A bunch of money and a person go missing. And her character is sent down there to solve things, at which point her quiet life is completely turned into chaos. And she says, also, it's a love story. Ann Patchett, who's supposedly a very reserved, lovely woman, swore at her. And she said, why? And she said, well, my story is about a spinster from Minnesota who's quietly in love with her married boss for many years. He gets involved in a business scheme. Someone and a bunch of money go missing, and she has to go down and sort it out. And her quiet life is thrown into chaos, and oh yeah, it's a love story. And they stared at each other, and they were in shock. And now there were some differences. Ann Patchett's was a contemporary story, and Elizabeth Gilbert's was from the 60s. Ann Patchett's was in the pharmaceutical industry, and Elizabeth Gilbert's was going to be in the construction industry, inspired by that story. But they just stared at each other with their tongues sticking out for a little while because they couldn't believe it. And so what that says to me is it proves what we talk about is that there's one mind. There's one mind, and that we are all part of that mind. And these inspirations, these ideas need to be expressed, and they want to find expression through us. And so if we are closed to it, or if we are taking too long with it, the idea itself is an entity, and it's going to go find its way to be expressed, because you know what? Life wants to be expressed. Ideas are an aspect of life. Inspiration is an aspect of life. And I was so amazed by that. It's amazing, isn't it? And that's a true story. You've got to read the whole thing. It's like wild to me. But it's also not surprising to me, because that's what we know about being connected to the divine. It wants us to be present with it. It wants us to be a channel for it. It wants to be expressed in life. And so we could be walking around wishing that we could come up with the next great idea, right? We could walk around and think, well, I'm not so creative, and just block off a whole part of our ability to listen to the divine inspiration. We have everything that we need to create and to experience that which we desire in our hearts and what we want our lives to be. We are the ones who close it off to it. So she talks about, it's funny because I love that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about ideas as an actual entity, right? That ideas are different beings. She said that this world is populated by humans and animals and plant life and everything, and ideas are a separate category. I just call that God. I call that the divine. And that it's that greater part that we are part of that will not be heard. I do have to say what I hear in the back of my head when I read this was, I remember that old movie, I am such a movie person, but, what's that one with Glenn Close and Michael Douglas? Fatal Instinct? Fatal Attraction, when she says, I will not be ignored. Right? Remember that? I will not. I'm still scared by that. You know, it scares me everything. But the point of it is that God is saying to us, I will not be ignored. If you're not going to do it, if you're not going to follow through with that idea, I'm going to go find someone who will. You don't want to play with me? I'll find a playmate. And so the whole idea here is for us to stay open and to stay present to that, to those messages, to those inspirations. Now you get to say no. You do get to say no. If you get an idea and it comes to you and it's courting you, and it's really not you know, the energetic of you, you don't have the time or the patience or the desire to go in that direction, you get to say, no, thank you. You might want to knock on a door down the street. But I'm still open for business. Bring me another one, right? I'll have another idea. And so that we're open to it, that we're welcoming it, that we're courting it, because that's how expansion happens. We're not going to be able to come up with something new right from our own consciousness, right from our own ideas. We need to be open to the infinite one. And that's so amazing to me, because it is up to us. And when I say that, there's a part of me that goes, yay, it's up to us, it's my responsibility to fix my life. And then I'm like, oh, yay. It's up to us. It's my responsibility to fix my life. And it reminded me, so when I was growing up, I was a child of my mother who came of age in the late 50s and 60s. Okay? So that's the era that I was raised in the 70s. And, but my mother was one who was very in alignment with the housewife of the 50s and 60s. And so for example, when we wanted to make a cake, we bought a mix. And so for my whole life, I thought that when you wanted cake, you had to go to the store, buy a Duncan Hines or Betty Crocker mix, and you had 2 eggs and some oil, and you mix it up, and you get a can of frosting. That's what I thought. When you want a birthday cake, that's the kind of birthday cake I got. That was how it was, right? And so picture I was 22 years old, living in my first apartment with my roommate, laying on the couch one day, watching TV going, God, I wish we had some cake, you know? And I'm like, God, wouldn't it be great to have some cake? And I forgot why I wanted cake, but I wanted cake. And I said to Becky, my roommate, I said, Becky, well, I'm too tired to go to the store, I don't want to. And she thought for a second, and she was like, we can make a cake. And I was like, we don't have a mix. And she just laughed at me, and she was like, come on. So she took me into the kitchen and sat down, and she had one bowl, and she put some flour in and some cocoa in and some eggs and some oil and all this stuff together, and we had cake, and she even made frosting, and I was like, oh my gosh, how do I not know this? I'm 22 years old, how do I not know, you know, that we can make cake? And so the whole idea is that yes, it would be great if our lives, there was a magic cake mix that we could mix up together and say a spiritual mix and say, okay, this is going to fix your life. This is going to give you what you want. This is going to allow you to taste the sweetness of who you've come here to be and why. But you know what? We don't have that. It's up to us to decide what it is that we want, what kind of cake we want, and how we want it to be, and what kind of ingredients we're going to pull together to create what it is that you want, to make your cake. And so the idea that all of these goodies of life, these things that we think we want to manifest, we want more money, we want more this, blah, 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 the stuff of life, that we think that that's the whole point of this, that's not it, that's the frosting. It's not bad, and actually if you make it right, it's really good. You know, it's the frosting of life, and we deserve that. We deserve to have the frosting in life, we deserve to have the goodies. But the truth is, you want the cake, and the cake is God. The cake is the presence of God, it's the truth of who you are. And so when we allow ourselves to awaken to the fact that we are the ones who are going to be the channel for our divine creativity, it's up to us to open to divine inspiration and to engage in that essence and that presence that is creativity in action. Every day you're creating something new. When you open your eyes, you have a choice as to how you can be and how you can navigate your day. You can navigate it with awe and wonder, waiting for God to thrill you, to inspire you. You can court it and welcome it and embrace it. Or we can shut it off and blame life, our parents, ourselves, and anything else on the fact that we are not fulfilled. So my best wish for us, my best idea is that there are more moments of awe, of joy and wonder for you, for each and every one of us. That instead of going through our days in that mundane way, seeing what's next, being bored and tired, struggling against what we think all of our challenges are, my best wish for us is that we allow ourselves to rise into that place of enchantment, to realize that this life is guiding us and supporting us and speaking to us, and as we listen to it, it's going to bring forth all of those things that bring great satisfaction, that bring great joy, that allow us to create a life of meaning, at least to us. Your life has to have meaning to you. It doesn't have to matter to anybody else, but it does have to matter to you. And so that's the difference, and that's what I'm knowing for us as we complete a month on creativity, that we're done with the humdrum, doldrums of life, and that we move into enchanted living. And so it is.